constraints, I will not be short and sweet. I hope to be short and sharp. Before I continue, I want to, we don't have enough time to acknowledge everyone, but I do want to acknowledge Sombat Sompon. On December 15, he would have been disappeared for a year. He was kidnapped, he's been subject to enforced disappearance, and he's one of our colleagues in this region who fought very hard for many, many years against the violations against Laotian people, especially with concerning land grabs, which is now becoming a worldwide epidemic and almost on a scale which I would say would be akin to a war against many rural and indigenous peoples. There's also Heng Chanta, a 14-year-old girl who was killed last year in Cambodia when security forces fired from a gunship helicopter, fired upon a crowd of unarmed protesters trying to defend their community from land grab. And let's not forget labor activist Aminul Haq Islam, who was disappeared, kidnapped, abducted, tortured, killed, and then dumped in a roadside in Bangladesh last year. This year, the death toll continues, but I still carry with me some of these cases. At the UN, the first UN Forum on Business and Human Rights in Geneva last December, I spoke about the factory workers, the workers who had been killed in garment factory fires in Pakistan and Bangladesh. But we didn't learn. Business didn't learn, states didn't learn, the international community didn't learn, because months later we had an even bigger disaster in Bangladesh where entire factories, a whole complex collapsed, killing thousands of people. When you look at those pictures, it'd be hard to imagine that this was not the result of a war. It looked like the whole place had been bombed. So when we talk about violations because of business activities, and we think we are fighting an injustice, on the ground, the reality is more akin to a war. Let's not forget the Tampakan massacre in the Philippines, where an entire family was surrounded and shot dead, massacred by military. How about the Lead Padang mine in Burma last year, where security forces fired phosphorus grenades on unarmed civilians? When we look at the environmental and human devastation that will result from the Belo Monte Dam in Brazil, when we look at the devastation caused by the Conga mine in Peru, when we look at the devastation caused by oil companies like Chevron and Shell in Ecuador, where we look at what happened in the land of the Ogoni people, our colleague here from Nigeria, it looks as though that whole land was devastated by war, not just by so-called business activities. We live in a world where countries are invaded on the suspicion of possessing chemical weapons. But when companies pollute our water, our soil, our air, poisoning us and killing communities, that's considered business. So when we look at what happened in Anvil in DRC, the Marikana massacre in South Africa, and let's not forget the mass atrocities against Rohingya and Muslim minorities in Arakan state, which preceded massive land confiscation to benefit an oil and gas pipeline as a result of state-owned enterprises between joint ventures between state-owned enterprises of China and Burma, then we start to see there is a pattern. It is a war. When we look at the fact that UN Security Council Resolution 1325 has determined that rape during war is not subject to amnesty, but yet in certain places rape of women linked to business as a result of business activities and the presence of representatives of business is somehow pardonable by non-judicial measures, where rape survivors are given chickens as some kind of non-judicial measure, then you start to wonder, where is the proportional balance? Where is the logic of this? This is why, when we look back, decades ago, the world felt entitled to a Geneva Convention to determine how state forces have to behave in a war situation. It has not been the golden bullet that, or the silver bullet in this case, that halted atrocities, but it has been a key mechanism that we, the international community and the human rights movement, has called on time and again, has referred to time again. We clearly need something equally strong to apply to businesses, to business behavior, because businesses are not all businesses are going to voluntarily follow guidelines and recommendations and assessments. We need a binding mechanism. We are not just fighting injustice. We need to understand, one of the biggest challenges is to understand that we need to work on this. We need to get public opinion, we need to get world opinion moving, feeling the urgency of how to hold corporations accountable for massive human rights violations, which have the equivalent impact of a conventional war in many places in this world. We need to understand, we need to get world opinion to feel this is as urgent as war. We need a binding mechanism to hold companies accountable. We need a binding mechanism that will be obeyed by companies, that will be fundamentally respected and prioritized by companies. We need the world to understand, just like the world understood decades ago that we were entitled to a Geneva Convention, this world is entitled to a binding mechanism to hold corporations accountable for human rights violations. Finally, on the theme of war and peace and business, I've left out copies of a report called Economics of Peace and Conflict on Burma. Burma is very sexy at the moment, so I encourage you. This is reader friendly, it's very thin and well constructed, so I encourage you to avail yourself of a hard copy report. Don't let the trees die in vain. Thank you.